Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Sandra Fleming, and I am honored to have Dr. Victoria Shaw with me today on the interview podcast. I'm just really psyched that I don't know. I just have to kind of say it. You are very talented. You have many gifts, right? You have an Ivy League education, and let's just hit that right now, okay? So you have a PhD in cognitive psychology at Princeton University, and then you completed training, your postdoctoral training, educational and developmental psychology at Columbia University. You got a master's of counseling from Fairfield University. You're a licensed professional counselor, certified school counselor in Connecticut, and you're author of 4 books.
Yes, that's me.
And you've been doing a podcast series for 5 years, and you've been using all of your gifts, which we're going to get into. What are these gifts? What are they all about? And I'm new. I'm about 2 years into this. And so you're an expert. You've been doing this since 2010, some of this mediumship energy work. And, I want people to hear your story because it's powerful. And I'm gonna try not to interrupt you, but I might have some questions along the way.
Go
But
for
it's,
it.
audience, just listen, hold on to your seat because it's a wild, exciting ride. She has a spectacular story. So yeah, let's just get started. How did you come into this world that you're in right now?
So I was a really intuitive child. I was a only child. I like to say, in the 70s, we were all kind of free range, but I was extra free range. Like I was a little borderline neglected child. So I had a really big inner world, spent a lot of time on my own. And so I think in those early years, I was really tapped in, not always to the best intuitive channels, but I was really tapped in. And, I also always felt this deep purpose, like throughout my life, especially like when I got, a little bit older, like middle school, high school, college. Like I always felt like there was this thing I was supposed to do, this purpose that I was following. I didn't really have a spiritual perspective. I was raised, I don't know what the heck was up with my mom, but my dad was, I like to call him a militant atheist, right? So he thought anyone who believed in anything spiritual was nuts.
Okay.
So, I didn't have any kind of spiritual, like culturally we were Jewish, but like the Jewish religion was not a thing that one could embrace in my family with respect. So I didn't really have that spiritual lens to look through things, but I did have a kind of a philosophical lens, and I did have parents that really valued intellectual achievement, accomplishment, being smart. And so I kind of went that route. And, I look back now and I went to, thank God, a really out of the box alternative school, high school, all the way through that really let me flourish and always like kind of follow my own flow. And I'm so grateful to that because most of us did not have that experience. And that was probably my savior. And in high school, I remember writing some papers that I got a lot of praise for. And I realized now I was channeling. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time.
Papers? What were they about?
One was on Dante's Inferno.
Wow.
I wrote that in the 10th grade. And it was kind of a psychological look at Dante. And I realized looking back, I just was reading his energy. Like I just was like tapping into who he was. And I did the same thing with another well-known author, Franz Kafka, who I did a really deep dive into reading all of his work. But it was the same thing. I was just tapping into his story, tapping into his energy. And then I wrote a couple more papers towards the end of high school. I took a class called The Bible as Literature. So this was my exposure to religion, was reading it as literature, right? And in that class, I know I was just channeling. I was talking about Genesis, and it was totally channeled. So I did all these things. I got a lot of praise, but you see, I thought that was my intellect. I thought that was my mind. And so, I went to college. I didn't get to do as much of the fun stuff in college. Because psychology, which turned out to be my major, was pretty, research based, but I did double major in philosophy, and I had a philosophy professor.
Um,
And, in class and in discussions, I would have this experience of going to the place beyond words. That's how it flowed for me. I would go to the place beyond words, and then I would come back with the verbiage and say things to my classmates. And my professor would always, call me. He's like, Victoria, you have that look on your face. I know something good is coming. Right. So now he's crossed over since then. So
wow.
Ken Taylor probably understands now what I was up to. But at the time, right, it's just that
But what did you think this came from? Like this?
my mind, right? Because that's what we
Okay.
were talking about,
Yeah.
right? And so, I ended up when I was done with undergrad, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I knew I loved, I was fascinated by these big questions, like what is consciousness, and what's the relationship between the mind and the body, and how do we understand the world? And I was being pushed towards psychology. That was my primary major. I had connections. My professor at where I was, my undergrad at Wesleyan, wanted me to go to her alma mater, Princeton, and she had connections there. Everything was moving in that direction. But even then, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. So I applied for every program that I applied to in psychology. I also applied in philosophy at the last minute. And I was like, let's just see which lands. And I got better. I got more money for psychology. I did get into a few philosophy programs too, but they weren't going to pay me money. So I ended up getting my PhD in psychology. And
Awesome.
and the person that I was working with was very philosophically minded. Again, we never had these conversations, but he was definitely very intuitive in the way that he worked. He had been a musician before he became a psychologist. And so he was very fascinated by all of that. But he was a big AI guy. Like a lot of the work that he did is probably fueled, Chat GPT and all the things that are happening now. Like that was a lot of the work that Phil was doing back in the 90s.
Yeah.
So he was very mathematical, which I am very much not. But anyway, so I went all in, I got the PhD. I got to the end of that journey, and it was all about doing research and asking questions that you could answer in the lab, which were mostly not very interesting questions. They certainly weren't the big questions that brought me into psychology. And I had this idea that we would, all of me and my classmates would be sitting over lunch, or over drinks in the evening, discussing these great, philosophical questions, or what I understood to be philosophical questions. And we weren't. We were talking about, LA Law, which was the big TV show at the time, which was fine. That was a great show. Google it, those of you who are not as old as I am. But
I never saw it, so I don't know.
It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, right? And so I got to the end of that journey, and I went on and did my.
Did you have any resistance as you were going through it? Did you feel like intuitively this didn't feel right?
I didn't have that. There were things that I knew about the world. I mean, I knew things. I was an empath, and I understood that. I felt my friends' labor pains. When I had a friend who had a terrible experience coming out, he was gay, and when he came out, it was in a very traumatic way. And I remember sitting in my thesis, Carol, as an undergrad, and I just knew in my bones that someone I loved was struggling. And I didn't, and I start calling people like, as if this person is, and I called this person. He's like, oh my God, you called it the right. So I understood like some of this stuff. Yeah. But no frame of reference. I didn't understand. I just, it happened to me. So I knew it was a thing, but I remember that particular moment. It was so strong. I was like, this is even either real or I'm losing my mind, because it was like so front and centered. Yeah. And, but I wouldn't have understood it as spiritual, like, cause I didn't have anyone to explain that to me. So it was really at the end of the journey, I just knew something was missing. This isn't what I wanted to do. And I wasn't passionate about it anymore. And
no, this was at the end of your postdoctoral training, or
midway through the postdoc. I was already feeling it before I did the postdoc, and even doing the postdoc, I was like, I'm going to see. I thought maybe what was missing was that it was just way too philosophical, like way too abstract, the things that we were doing. So my postdoc was a little bit more practical. So I was like, maybe if I do something that I can see the impact that the research has on the world, I'm going to like it better. So I did the postdoc and I was about midway through. And it was a tricky situation. The person I was working for was not a kind person, and the whole, but it was also just within me. Like it wasn't, I just knew this wasn't what I wanted to do. So I left academia, because it was like at that level, it was sort of like being in the MBA. Like you
Mm.
need to give your life to it. You need
Yeah.
to give your life to it. You know, you go where the jobs are, you work 24/7.
I
And
felt that way
like,
in medical school. You just,
yeah,
you go where the opportunity is and you don't question it. You just go. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, if I don't love this and
Mhm.
I'm not passionate about this, I don't want to do it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it doesn't make sense anymore. So I took some time off. I did some writing. I was invited to write some self-help books by a small publisher, an educational publisher. So I did that. That was really fun. And I got pregnant because I was like, well, I have nothing
Okay.
better to do. I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I do know I want to be a mom. I had just gotten married. So I was like, I'm going to start my family. And it was through that journey that really everything awoke and changed for me. First of all, because I had this really out of the box pediatrician who was already tapped into all of this stuff. And
What do you mean by
um,
this stuff?
like he sent me to an acupuncturist. That was weird.
Like that?
And the
Yeah.
acupuncturist, I know now in retrospect, I didn't get it at the time, was a medical intuitive. Right.
Mm.
But later he started sending me to like these energy healers and these different people that were like increasing, and astrologers. And like, so I got exposed to this whole world that I'd never heard of before. And then I also started doing yoga. And my mom had been a yogi because she's super flexible, I think. And, like it was easy for her. But like in New York City, when I started doing yoga, like it was at Jivamukti, which was a studio. And they would start every class with like a little bit of a sermon, basically, and talking about some yogic spiritual principle, whatever the teacher wanted to talk about. And I loved it. I was like, I wonder if this is what people get out of going to church, because I never had that. So that was a little dose of spirituality, right? I started
Mm.
meditating a little bit. I started, so this whole world opened up. And as I
Did you
started
find
to,
yourself kind of craving that? Like you just, because some people struggle with meditation. It just doesn't come natural for people,
I don't think
right?
it comes naturally for anybody, but
But I had a point in my life, especially when I was on the Joe Dispenza train in 2023, and I was listening to everything that he was talking about. But I got to a point where I just craved getting up in the morning and
oh,
sitting
yeah.
there, right, and meditating. It's like it was my church, like you said. But I
Oh,
was
for
just
sure.
curious how it unfolded for you, because someone who was not raised that way, it's very new world, this type of practice. It's like a ritual, right? And so
Yeah.
it's
Well, to
not
be to be honest, I would walk up, drop my kids off at school, or drive up, drop my kids off at school, walk down to the yoga studio, and I would always have a little bit of time to kill in between. It wasn't worth going home. So I would get on my mat, for 20 minutes or however long I was there before class started, and I would get my good spot away from the bathroom where all the roaches were. And for real, it was nasty. And I would meditate. And it's funny because, like people around me would be chattering and talking but I didn't really, I would just sit down on my mat and meditate before class. And so that's kind of how it started. It was more just like a time fill. And here I am in yoga class. So, why not? And then I also started, really starting to expand. Like at first, these people were doing this intuition thing, and I didn't know what it was, but it was working. But then, I just got more and more curious because these things were not the things that were happening were not fitting with the left brain world.
Mhm.
And so by the time in 2006, I moved from New York to Connecticut. And then it was just like so much better for my nervous system. I am not a city girl. I did that for
Yeah,
the
I did
man
my
I was
clinical
married to
training
at
in
the
Brooklyn,
time.
New York, so I totally,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. It was
Great
torture for me.
experience.
Yeah.
So glad, I wouldn't go that far, but like for me, but like when I left, it was just and my nervous system quieted
Mhm.
down a little bit. And, it just everything sort of changed. And I started working with this astrologer, this intuitive astrologer. And, she gave me a reading that she was like, basically, here's all your hopes and like everything you ever imagined that you were supposed to do in your life. This is what your chart says. And it just brought me back to that sense of purpose that I had and all these things that I really knew about myself and valued about myself. And she's like, this is your chart, you know, this is your life. And
Well, why did you
something
believe
kind of
it?
clicked.
Well, I mean, you're a scientist. I mean, right?
I
Why?
believed it because it resonated. I believed it because
Wow.
here this person is looking at me and this was all the stuff that I felt called and driven to do when I was in high school. And then, I just followed the path that was in front of me and, hit that dead end. And all of a sudden now someone else is holding up a sign and saying, no, honey, look here. And so I
Wow.
did. I
And this
did.
person didn't know you.
Mm-mm.
She was a stranger. And
Oh no, complete stranger.
she channeled all this
Yeah.
astrology, this chart for
She
you.
looked at my chart and then also intuitively received. And I still have that little cassette tape because this again was
Wow.
like, many years ago when we still had those. And I still have that little cassette tape. And sometimes I play it, because it's astounding. And
Wow.
she kept telling, I worked with her as a coach for about 3 years. And she's the one who kept saying, like, you gotta do this intuition thing. You're really intuitive. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. And really all the people I was working with were giving me that same thing. All these weird intuitive people were like, you got this too. You got to do this. This is your thing. And I started to listen and I made that. I took a couple classes, like intuition development classes, and it happened very quickly. It happened very, very quickly, like really from the first class. Like I just realized, oh, I have this ability to read people. Like it just comes to me. As soon as I quiet my mind, I can know things about people I've never met. And I was like hungry for it. I mean, I wouldn't do this now, but at the time I was like reading everyone at my husband's office because I was like, is this like, is this ring true? Like, because I was just like hungry to do this thing that was opening up for me.
The people were coming to you and you were meeting.
No. At this point, I just had started meditating and started doing this work and taking these intuition development classes, and all these abilities just started to open up.
So you could
And
like
so
walk by someone and just pick up
I
some of
wouldn't
the.
do that. Even then, I wasn't, not on purpose. Probably was doing that all the time, not on purpose. Because one of the things that I learned too is I was very overwhelmed. I was an empath. I was picking up energy from everyone. I remember doing energy healing with this person also that I don't know who recommended, but my pediatrician knew her too. And I'm someone, if someone does energy work on me, I feel it in my body. So not everybody does, but I feel the movement of energy. So, all of a sudden, like my legs are like going crazy. They're tingling. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm removing all this angry energy from your legs. And I was like, you can do that? That's a thing. But
That was
then,
just like me too. That was me a
yeah.
couple of years ago. Yeah.
But then she said something to me too that like blew my mind. She's like, and you haven't met most of these people. So I was just a sponge, like just drinking up random stuff. So a big part of my journey too was learning to stop doing that, learning to tune into the higher channels, the clearer channels, learning to set personal, emotional, and energetic boundaries. And that helped too the vessel for me to receive my intuition and really the higher guidance, because that's what I do now. I receive information from people's souls, higher selves and spirit guides and source. Like it cleared me up to connect with that channel first and foremost. And that's what
So
most
for
of what I do
people who
today.
are not understanding what you're
Okay,
saying,
sorry.
right, is well, and I just, you know what, this is after death communication, we call ADC, right? And so you are able to channel some of the people who have crossed over, right, who have passed away, are people that you may have known or your
Yeah.
client may have known, right? So you're able to pick up on and channel some of the things that they're saying and pass that message on, which is what a medium, right? I like to say spiritual medium.
Sure.
Um, but and that's kind of what I'm coming into. And it's I'm do energy work as well, and I'm realizing you can combine these gifts in one session, and I'm sure that happens to you all the time. And
Yeah.
you've been doing this for a long time, so let's kind of digress a little bit, and you
Sure.
give me an example of maybe a client or two or three that you've been working with that has really changed their life, because
Oh
that's what
my
you're
God.
doing, right? You're really making an impact so people can open up not only to this world and their gifts, which we call the clairs. Maybe you can explain that, but just kind of give us an example of why you're doing this work, how it works, and what people are walking away with. How is it filling their cup?
You asked a lot in there, but
Yeah,
I will do my very best. And I'm not going to mention any particular clients because confidentiality and stuff, but I can
of
speak
course.
generally.
Yeah,
But so I've been doing this work now for 16 years. And, for me, it's always about following the flow of my intuition. That's how I live my life now. And that's how I really think we should all live our lives. That's what I teach. When you listen to your intuition, you're basically following the guidance of your soul.
yeah,
And we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. But first and foremost, you're a spiritual being. And when you come into this human realm, you learn all this stuff about the world and how it works and who you are and how you're different from other people and what's good and what's bad and what's valuable and what's not. A lot of it's garbage, but it's okay because it's part of the human experience. But you see, your soul holds a higher truth for you.
yeah,
Right. So for me, all of those years when
absolutely.
I was following my purpose, I didn't even need to know what it was. I just had to keep listening. Right. And I was really adept at doing that until the world said, no, go this way, honey. And I was like, oops. But it was good. I don't regret having all those letters after my name. It's
Crystal,
all, it's
you gotta have,
all, yeah,
yeah,
it all works out. It
it
always
all
does.
matters.
But so a lot of what I do is help people learn to hear that and be guided by that. Okay. Their highest calling, right? No matter what's going on in their lives, if they're coming to me for a counseling issue, they're going through a divorce, or they're feeling depressed or anxious, or they're having trouble as a parent, or they're lost and they're trying to like find their way. They know, like I did, that there's something that they're supposed to be doing. And I don't even think of it that way anymore, but it's this feeling of like, I just don't feel aligned with my life.
Yeah,
Right. And so I can help people reconnect. And I do this in a couple of ways. The first one is helping them to hear their own intuition. And I've been teaching intuition development now for as long as I've been doing this work. And, that was the pivotal thing in my life when I learned to listen again, when I learned to know what it felt like, when I learned to know what was my intuition, what was not, when I learned to clear out the garbage so that I can tune into the highest, purest, cleanest channels. That's when everything about my life changed. I have never looked back. My intuition is the greatest gift that I have. And I follow it now pretty much no matter what,
yeah,
and I trust it. And I use my mind the way it was intended to be used, which is to have this lovely human experience, but as a servant of my intuition and not the other way around, because most of us live this mind guided life like this, and we just keep bumping into stuff. And, it's not as comfortable as having your eyes more open and
yeah.
seeing things more from that bird's eye, that soul perspective. So
And
I
I think
help people
we're
do that
operating that way over 5,000 years ago,
for
right?
sure.
We
Oh,
shifted
yeah.
more to a patriarchal society, right? About for the last 5,000 years. And,
Yeah.
we didn't, it's not to badmouth, but we didn't balance that masculine and feminine.
Yes,
It was just very out of balance. And so now I think,
for
as you and I
sure.
talked about before, there's an awakening. And so
Yeah.
there's a shift where there's more feminine energy coming in. And so it's helping us kind of tune in to this
Yeah.
intuition that tends to be more of a feminine. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm reading,
I look at things in a different way, but that is
yeah,
one way of looking at
yeah,
it. My guides have explained it to me a little bit differently. And by guides too, because we haven't talked about that. So we're all
yeah.
spiritual beings
Let's talk
having
about it. Yeah,
yeah, we're all, and then we can go back to that question. We're
yeah,
all spiritual beings having a human experience. And when we come to earth, we kind of agree that we're going to go like this. And in about the first 7 years of your life, and I know this because I'm also a developmental psychologist, that's when you really become totally enmeshed in this 3D world. Okay. And your brain is like a filter. So there's all sorts of information coming in, but your brain, particularly the left brain, is a filter. And what happens over time is you start to filter down. You lose neuronal connections in those first 7 years of life. You don't gain them. You actually like trim the hedge. Okay. And what's happening is you learn things like vision is one thing. This is what I see. This is what I hear. This is what I taste. All of those things. In the intuitive world, we have what's called synesthesia. It's all just kind of mushed together. And a lot of, my highly intuitive friends, when they start opening up these gifts, it's like, they may say, I see something, but really what they do is feel it. It's not as broken up the way that it is in this human world, right? That's all things that we learn. We learn how to parse the world in that way. Right. So you start to, and you also get conditioned, you learn about the world and a value system and who you are and what your role in the world is. So you learn a lot of things about yourself, right, that take you away from your soul's path. Right. But there's that part of you, your higher self, spirit, or soul, that doesn't forget, that's still holding that ever present, highest you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also these beautiful energies that, guides, these beautiful beings that are here for us, that are not in human form. So they're not wearing the blinders. And they kind of will help you bridge the gap. Okay. So a lot of what I do too is work with people's spirit guides. And again,
and are these guides, were they guides that have been on the planet Earth before?
sometimes. Yeah, my understanding, and again, I'll know when I cross, because it's very hard for our human minds to really grasp this stuff. So it's always a little story we're telling ourselves, which is the best we can do based on our limited human awareness. But my understanding, what's been explained to me, is that we all have at least one guide that has been on Earth before. That's our primary guide. That's like, hey, I've done this. I know what it's like over there. Let me help you.
Yeah, I got your back.
Yeah, but we have a range of guides, and they can do everything for us. Some of them have incarnated on Earth, and some of them have not. And there's many different ways. There was periods of time too, my guides have shown me, and I've seen them when the veil between worlds wasn't so strong. When we see mythology about gods and goddesses, that speaks to some remembering of a time when gods walked on the earth, because there wasn't this difference. And so we didn't have like such a, anyway, that's a story for another day. But
I mean, we could go down the rabbit holes about children, how they're born today, and then how we brainwash them into,
it's not
systems. And
bad. It's not bad. It's part of the human experience. So I wouldn't I wouldn't use any of that verbiage, brainwash, whatever. It's part of the human journey, but we have that opportunity at any moment to wake up and use what we've created so far to help us move forward, and to help us, and to look at, I don't like this. So what do I like? Right? Oh, I didn't like being treated like that because it felt wrong. It was wrong because it's not true, sweetheart. You're beautiful. You're lovable. You're enough. You're valuable. So at every moment we have that opportunity to wake up to ourselves again.
And you're speaking of those wounds, those core wounds that we kind of collect. Starting in childhood. And so that's some of the work that you're doing, right? Is you're addressing some of that trauma, those core wounds. And again, like you said, it's brainwashing is a kind of a harsh term, but you're right. It goes back to Earth School, that we're supposed to get dragged through the mud. This is part of the process, be that lotus, right? That is going to rise above.
When your soul is contemplating a human experience, that's the only way to say it, right? It's usually a deep longing, an excitement, a curiosity. It's hard for us to see that from the human lens, because a lot of times we feel like we're struggling and it doesn't seem fun at all, but it's fun to your soul. Okay. So it's contemplating something that it wants to explore, understand, right? It's a curiosity. And so it'll pull because of the law of attraction, which is something else we haven't talked about, but everything in this world is energy, and and everything vibrates, and like vibration attracts like vibration. So you have an intention, your soul has an intention, and then it pulls to it all of the cooperative components for you to have that experience, right? So your family, where you grow up, the cultural context, all of those things, you pulled it towards you as you incarnate, right? And you continue, of course, to do that throughout your life, right? So we pull these experiences towards us, and oftentimes, especially older souls, will sometimes pull a lot of difficulty at the beginning, because it's like a slingshot, right? And if you pull that slingshot way, 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 way back, when you release it, how far you can go. Okay.
But
it's not the only way to do it
with clients when they're coming in. And that's probably foundational, the work that you're doing to
It varies. Sometimes we go to the past. I mean, it's the reason I went back and got my master's of counseling is as soon as I started working with people, I realized I was doing counseling and I was like, I probably want this skill set. Because I would see like, oh, that thing that happened to you when you were 4. Do you know what that was? Because that's what's coming up for you now. So for sure we do that work sometimes. And sometimes, it can be really, really helpful to understand the childhood antecedents of what we're experiencing now. But we also want to be really careful because we are creating the past, present, and future all the time. So we don't want to just like keep playing the
Yes.
story of my wounded past, right? We want to say, oh, sweetheart, that hurt. But then eventually we find the understanding, the joy, the peace with it, and we move forward. And your biggest point of attraction is now.
Yes.
So I really, as much as I can, anchor people there too. It's not that we discount the past, but that, in order to co-create a more harmonious future, it's important that we anchor ourselves in the now. So I help people with that too. So
are you bringing
lots of
in
tools.
kind of the quantum field, quantum physics, quantum? I mean, are you, I know some of that I know you know about it, but is that something that's helping with the healing process that people know? I mean, and this is just what I've
Yeah,
gathered is that, and I'm helping people heal their trauma by, that little girl that was wounded still exists inside
sure.
you, just like that future higher self is in you right now. Let's kind of not, time is not linear. It's a man-made illusion, right? So do you use that in part of the healing process that people can understand that there's lots of parts of ourselves that need to be addressed and healed and validated, right, and
Yeah.
loved?
I always follow the intuitive flow. So I am completely self-trained, except for my 3 advanced degrees. But in the spiritual world, I'm completely self-trained. That doesn't mean I've never picked up a book. Like
Yeah,
certain teachings resonate with me, and I definitely have done deep dives into Eckhart Tolle's teaching, Abraham Hicks' teaching. So, like, if something really speaks to me, I will flow with it. But mostly, I follow my guides and my soul and what comes through in a session because I find that is the most powerful thing. But inner child work is definitely something that has been front and center to my work from the beginning and for my own personal journey,
right.
and so I think that we all have these parts, and it's just about bringing them into the fold and loving them and learning to reparent them. And it brings us to a place
Absolutely.
of forgiveness and peace. And I think a lot of it is about understanding why, because a lot of times we don't understand how we got where we are.
Mhm.
And having some understanding, it helps us forgive ourselves. Oh, sweetheart, this is happening because of that. And every behavior that we do, everything that you do as a human being, it comes from a belief that thing is going to make you feel better. That's all we want, is to feel good. We are
Yeah.
moving towards feeling good. That is your soul's resting state, and you want to get back there. And so even things that we do that seem self-destructive, there's always an implicit belief that this is going to make me feel better. This is going to move me towards well-being. So it's always serving a purpose. The thing is that sometimes we get stuck in these loops where, you know what I mean? It's giving you some relief temporarily, but it's like after a while, it's not serving you anymore. So you need to
You're
go to
kind of
the next
speaking
step.
like someone struggling with addiction,
Could be
right?
addiction,
Where they're
could
looking to
be
feel good.
interpersonal ways of dealing. It could be anger management, right? Anger is a really great feeling if you're feeling shame, right? Anger is a great step up. And many of us have to
Mm,
go through that. We have to go through the anger, right? Other people get stuck in that anger loop, right? Where they feel the shame, they get mad, right? Then
yeah,
they feel ashamed that they got mad, and then they're looping.
yeah.
So the anger is not wrong or bad. It's releasing, it's getting you to a higher level, but we can do better than that. That's the thing. You can even do better than that. And so a lot of the work that I do is helping people see what their next best step is, just to feel even better and to move towards, that, enlightenment is a heavy word, but
Yeah.
move increasingly towards a place where you can embrace life and that human self and that higher self are in greater alignment more of the time. And when we do that, we experience more abundance, we experience more joy, we experience more flow, synchronicity, ease. And when the human stuff happens, and it happens to everyone, it's part of life, it doesn't often derail us quite as much as it did before. Like we have the tools and resources to get back up on that horse and just ride.
I love it.
And
Well, give us an
that to
example.
me is what, living in alignment and the work that I do is about.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I love that. I mean, that was so spot on. Certainly resonated with me as well. But tell me of a client that you worked with that you can kind of give a before and after, just an experience of someone who's listening, because everybody sees themselves in stories, right? So, how did you help someone maybe with addiction or with,
Yeah, addiction is
struggling?
not something that I do. Don't come to
Or
me for
yeah,
that.
or a marriage
Go to
breakup.
a 12 step.
Yeah.
A lot of, I'm like I said, I'm not speaking about any specific clients because I respect their privacy and confidentiality, but like oftentimes somebody will come like with an expression of some of their childhood wounding, right? Like maybe they're having trouble setting boundaries in their lives or in their relationship, right? Or maybe they're reacting rather than responding, or maybe they're making choices based on this, because they were very overwhelmed as a child, right? And so they get into this sense of overwhelm and they make really poor choices. So it's really helping people recognize like where those things are going wrong, and then bringing in, recognizing those patterns, and then having the tools and skills to take that step back and listen to the soul.
Mm.
Okay. It's different for everyone. And big success stories, I don't know, my favorite one, and I can share this because it's public, but I did on my TV show Living in Alignment, we did 2 seasons, and the season 2 just dropped now, but they were actually filmed about, I think
Nice.
it was actually like 6 weeks apart, 6 or 8 weeks apart, so it was like a very short period of time between the actual filming of the 2 seasons, even though they dropped a year apart. And one of the participants, Lori, and her episode is going to go live in a couple of weeks, because
I'm
our grand
excited. I can't
finale
wait.
for season 2. But
Yay.
and this is a spoiler alert, friends, if you're going to watch the series.
Oh, I'm
Sorry
totally
to
gonna
tell
watch
you this, but still watch it anyway, because there's
it.
lots of good episodes. But between season 1 and 2, she wrote a book. Another person who was in season 2, her episode is live. Laura, Abby, I mean, she's had tremendous growth. She just pulled off, I mean, a huge international summit that she organized here in San Diego, and just her confidence in the way that she interacts
Wow.
with people. And a lot of it too, I was thinking about this morning in the shower, which is where I do all my best receiving for myself, and I was really thinking about a lot of it is presence. We don't talk enough about presence, but when we really, a lot of what awakening is expanding presence. What is presence? It's just that awareness, that pure awareness, without thought, without being, without judgment. It's just, And when we can get into that state of presence, we hear our intuition more clearly or at all. We start to be aligned more with our higher self or soul. We let go of attachments for things that block us for, creating abundance and experiencing all the things that we want in our lives. And also it just feels good. You talked about meditating and craving meditating. That's because meditation, brings us more of those pops of stillness, of presence. And so a lot of times what's happening is that people are just doing these learned patterns over and over again, right? They're just conditioned things. I've learned when this happens, I do that. When this happens, I do that. They're knee-jerk reactions. And
Survival patterns.
we
Yeah.
just do it we're
Yeah.
completely unconscious.
Yeah.
And then we don't understand why, we keep getting the same result. When we bring more presence to a situation, it opens up more options. It opens up more understanding. It allows for more self-trust. It connects us to those higher pipelines of wisdom. And that's what I
And,
see
and that's why,
happening when people work with me.
yeah. And you can kind of help with that. Okay, you're always attracted to this type of
Yeah.
relationship, right? You want to do a do-over and it's what you're familiar with. So
Yeah.
you're trying to help them. Well, what is it your higher self really want and crave and need? right?
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
connecting, like you said. I think
Yeah.
that's just a real life application, is that,
Yeah.
we somehow keep finding people that are, that are
Yeah.
like our
Watch
abusive
your life.
clever, right?
Your
So
life will always show you what you believe.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
life will always show your perceived limitations. And then you'll say, oh, but they're real. But
yeah,
you're actually creating those, my friends. So
core
when you can look at your life and say, I don't like this, then the shift is always within. The shift is always within. And it's not about beating yourself up because you're not doing anything wrong. You're
yeah,
doing everything perfectly right. It's around bringing more awareness to what's going on, having a lot more tenderness and love and respect and trust for yourself because you're doing just fine. And then the soul will flow through you more, the wisdom will come through you more. I don't do anything with the mind. We don't sit there and try to figure out what's going on here. That's what I would have done with my PhD, back in the old days. I don't do that. We listen deeply to the soul, to the guides, to higher self, right? To the intuition. We listen to that. It will show you every single way. You can just let that mind go soft.
Mhm.
And it's nothing to figure out. It's connecting with that deeper knowing. And you'll know when you know, because it feels right. It feels right. And there's
And
not a
let's,
person on this planet that hasn't had that
yes,
experience when they know in here.
it's a
It's
language we know.
completely
We
different
just have to,
than knowing in here. We just have
yeah.
been taught that we have to vet everything here and explain it all through that. And that's where we get lost.
So it sounds like what you're saying is someone who's new to this world, who wants to, put their toe in the water, brand new, that they
Uh-huh.
start with some tools. And so let's talk about those tools that they can just begin today. And meditation is one of them,
For
right?
sure. And
Quieting the mind.
anything that quiets your mind. And meditation is a practice.
Mhm.
And you may sit in that practice and your mind may not feel still at all, but in the doing of it, right, it helps us to learn that we are not our thoughts, right? Because you are actually the space. You are the one who is aware of the thoughts. You are not the thoughts themselves. And that can be a huge aha, just right
Yes.
there. So meditation can really help you do that. It can help you cultivate more presence. It's not the only way. I am not an avid meditator. I love to spend time in nature, walk at the beach, listen to music, move my body. Some people, again, baths, showers are a really good place where people hear their intuition. Really doing anything where you're in the flow, you're connected with your soul or your source. So any of those things work, but meditation is phenomenal. And then
Breath work,
also
right,
breath
goes with
work can
that.
be one.
Right, right.
Absolutely. Some people find
Yeah,
psychedelics. I have mixed feelings about that, but in the
I do
right
too.
hands,
Yeah.
that can be a thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, but the goal with all of these practices is, of course, to bring it into your daily life, right? So it's not, I mean, look, if you feel a call to go meditate, for 12, 15 hours a day on a mountaintop, then if that's your call, you go do that. It's totally fine, but you don't have to do that, right? Many of
Required.
us are here to actually become
15 minutes.
enlightened
Yeah,
by
yeah,
living our lives, right?
yeah.
And so life is a meditation. Life is
And
your
you're talking really to
meditation.
shift, right? You're just shifting to that soul language that we all have. And
Yeah.
meditation will help us just get there quickly.
It can
And
help some people become more
okay.
present and know what that presence feels like and learn to still the mind. And again, it's not so much about stilling your mind because, whatever we resist persists. So if you're like, stop thinking, stop thinking, stop thinking, those are thoughts.
Yeah.
It's more about having that observer stance of being like, oh, look at those little clouds of thought in the sky. I can watch them go past, but I don't engage with them. Or if I do get caught up in them, I'm like, oh, look what I just did. And then coming back to center. And so that's what the practice of meditation can do for you. It can help you cultivate awareness and presence. It is not the only way. Eckhart Tolle, who's, one of the best known spiritual teachers of our time, like he doesn't teach meditation, right? He doesn't teach meditation. He teaches presence as a practice in life and how to get back to that. So, I mean, I love tools. I know people love tools, and I can give you a bunch of tools to connect to your intuition, all that. I have taught that class many times. But so much of it comes in that present moment, like what's going to be most useful to you at the time. There's no formula that you can know ahead of time. There are pointers. There are things that can point you in that direction. And I can give you ideas that may or may not resonate with you. But intuition will always give you the best next step, the best tool, the best feeling, thought, whatever it is, in the now. And
Mm.
it'll always be uniquely suited for you in the now. That's what it does. The now isn't a moving target. So your intuition may tell you go left at one moment, and then a moment later it say, yeah, no, never mind, go right. And
Yeah.
I know
Life,
backwards, but
for sure.
yeah. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is it always gives you the best thing in the now, but your mind can't encapsulate that. So no teachings, no books, no. So it's always really important to use teachings in the world with a soft mind, meaning feel into what feels good to you right now. If it doesn't land, it's probably not for you.
Yeah. Well, would you say that self-love and self-compassion, self-acceptance is all kind of part of the process, right? To really, because if you feel that guilt and shame all the time, it's going to be hard to sit and meditate. It's going to hard when things drop in, it's going to hard to believe that. It's like, wait a minute. Suddenly these weird images are coming in my mind. Is that my human brain, or is that someone on the other side trying to communicate with me? Right.
Right.
So it all, yes, I know
You
I
said
threw a
you
lot out.
said you said a lot of
Yeah.
different things in there, so I'd love to parse
Break it
them
apart,
out.
please.
Yeah.
You're the
Number
expert.
one, the purpose of meditation for the most part is not to connect with your intuition. Most meditative practices are about stilling your mind. And sometimes, the moment you come out of meditation, just like the moment you come out of sleep and you're in that hypnagogic state, like that's a great time to receive.
Mhm.
But there are meditations designed. I have a meditation in my self-paced intuition class that's like a meditation, a guided visualization to meet your spirit guides. So if you're doing something like that, for sure, because anything that gets us into that slightly altered state is where we can more clearly hear our intuition and our guidance. But meditation itself is really all about quieting the mind and learning to, cultivate presence. That's what
You'd be
most of
surprised
those
what drops
teachings are
into my
for.
meditation. I get interrupted
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
time. I'm
for
like,
sure.
I have faces. Yeah.
Because when your mind is still, it opens up all these other things, right? And that's totally fine. You can
Yeah.
meditate for that reason as well. Um, and then how do we know the difference? It's discernment, it's practice. So when I teach intuition development, one of the things that we work on the most is how do you know what's your mind and how do you know it's your intuition? A couple quick little pointers are if it's unkind, it's your mind. Your guides aren't beating you up. Your higher self doesn't hate you. You are love incarnate. Okay. So you are made from unconditional love. That is the only currency of the universe. Here on earth, again, we see it a little distorted sometimes, but if anything is unkind, it is your conditioning. It is what you've learned from this human world. It is not who and what you really are. So I just want to let everybody know that right now. Your soul loves the pants off of you. And again, living in alignment is about living more and more from that soul state, that soul lens where you're beautiful and you're lovable and you're amazing. And if you're having trouble getting there because you've had a lot of conditioning that said it's not safe or it's not okay to love yourself, or you just feel a lot of shame. It's not about shaming the shame, friends, right? It's about loving yourself where you're at or allowing yourself to be where you're at. That's
Yeah.
probably a safer one for a lot of people.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay. But
Yeah.
the knowing the difference, the discernment piece, whether you're in meditation or not, it's always loving. It's often surprising. It's often, I say, counterintuitive. It's not what you expected. It's always clear, calm. There's not usually an emotional charge to your intuition. Sometimes the mind will come in. Sometimes there's like an urgency. Every once in a while, I feel like there's something I really want to share, and I'm like, just it's like really hard to hold it back because I'm so excited. But it's not like human emotions because emotions are on the human realm. Your spirit, soul, higher self, where intuition comes from, doesn't have any of that. So the emotions, even when you get intuition about maybe people that get precognitive hits about something that might not be preferred to their ego,
Mm.
the initial hit's always neutral. It's always neutral. Okay. And then sometimes the mind comes in and goes, no, I don't like that.
Right.
So these are just a couple ways to tell, but then also the proof is in the pudding. So we learn to listen, we learn to hold space, we learn to be curious, and then you'll start to see which ones pay off and which ones are, oh, yep, that was my mind. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed sometimes when things come through my human brain, give the evidence, right? The details, but my human brain is going to want to interpret it and
Yes.
just mess it all up,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
hold
so,
space for that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Hold space
Yeah.
for that. It's really a curiosity. You're making me think. For me, the first ways, and we could talk about the five clairs. These are your five psychic senses, and they work around the human senses. I'm not a fan of teaching that way. It's a great start, but because it's unnecessarily limiting, because like I said, a lot of us have synesthesia. I had a medium on my show, and I loved it. He was sharing about how when he says, I see a man with a hat, he's like, I don't see anything. I feel it, I sense it, but I just use the word see because that's how
Yeah.
people understand it, right? So our
Mhm.
intuitive felt sense is much different than
Yeah.
the human senses, though some people do see. I was on the show of a famous medium, Suzanne Wilson, and she asked me a question. I tuned into my guides. And for me, when I tap into my guides, I feel as if their energy is here. I call this now my spirit spot, and I feel them there, and I tap in. What she said is, I saw 3 funnels come into your energy field when you said that. And that's how I see spirit guides, right? So we all have our own unique language and our own unique way of experiencing it. But back to the point I was going to make, but when I first started receiving visual information, and again, I don't see things in the 3D like Suzanne, when
Keith
her
Smith.
intuition
That's
opened
like
up,
that.
spirit like handed her towel when she got out of the bathroom. I fortunately have not had that experience, and
Really?
I am happy for it. But yeah, I listened to the episode. It's
I need
awesome.
to listen to that. That's
She's
wild.
amazing. She's
Okay.
amazing. The carefree medium. I started to receive sort of visual images, metaphors, really. And there's some of the most powerful way that my guides and that your clients' guides communicate information in sessions. And they're oftentimes the things that people really, it's a big aha for them because, a picture really is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And it's just a great information. But when I first started getting these, they would start to download and then I would start to interpret them too soon. And I'd be like, oh, I don't like where
Yeah.
this is going. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I don't want to say this.
Yeah.
And so I would shut it down.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to just receive, just trust, just recount. And then, it's a later stage where you figure out like what it means or how to unpack it. And so it's just like if you're a writer and you go in with that editing pen too soon, you shut down the flow. It's the same thing with your intuition. You have to be curious. You have to keep that mind soft. And then, it'll fill in the gaps. It'll make sense. And you have to kind of know without knowing
Mm-hmm.
here before
Mm-hmm.
you can know, right? You have to be open to that. So yeah, absolutely. But I
So you're
have to
just kind of, and
say,
when you're channeling, you're in the flow and you're not letting your human brain interrupt. Like it's just,
no,
right?
not
Because
so
that,
much.
again, the human brain's trying to interpret the information, which is not what we want to do, right?
what
You're,
the guides say is that what I do, and this is unique to me, and this is coming directly for them, is I have the ability, they say, honed over many lifetimes, which is a conversation too for another day, but
definitely.
to take energetic transmissions and easily transmit them into words, or they say highly usable form, human usable form. That's the verbiage that they're using, right? Because we're talking about images too now. And I just have that ability. So I simply receive the energy and I'm like a translator,
Yeah.
okay, or a transmitter. Sometimes too, they use what I know. They use my life experience.
Mm.
Sometimes
Yes.
too, I like to interject because I'm on this journey too. And it's been, and everyone's different, but I've been told again and again, could be my ego, don't know, but I'm going to go with it, that like my lived experience, that I'm a soul that has many many lifetimes, and that I have things to share as well. And so a lot of times I'm channeling my higher self, but also Victoria Shaw, the personality, is sometimes coming in and saying, hey, like this has been my experience, with humility,
Right.
not with expertise, with, hey, this has been my experience, and what do you think about that? And so we kind of work together.
Mm-hmm.
But in the channeling piece, I really just receive, I'm a transmitter and then a disseminator of the information that comes through. And the mind can come in very quickly sometimes. But for me, not so much. I've really learned what the two things feel like. And when my mind becomes intertwined with the words, it's kind of as it's supposed to be. And I also have my own internal little tripwires that if I notice they're tripped, I stop, I pause, I tune back in. For example, if I'm telling someone something that I tell everybody, like just it's
Mm.
become like a story, I tune in. I'm like, okay, is this just because this is information I meant to share with the world in general, but is this also relevant to this person? So I'll tune in, I'll get present, I'll make sure, right? If it's something that doesn't feel good to my humanness, I'll tune in, I'll listen a little more deeply, I'll make sure. If it's something that I have a strong opinion about, right? I'll tap in, I'll listen, because sometimes I've worked with other mediums, intuitives, whatever, and because I'm very kinesthetic, I can feel when they go from the flow to suddenly now we're into their opinion and they don't even know that they're there. Right. So now all of a sudden Aunt
I feel like
Jen
it doesn't.
is telling you, call your
Yeah.
mother. I had someone
Yeah.
on the show with this story that, the medium, she was in her, she had an estrangement from one of her parents, and it was a very good thing to have. And she went to a medium, and the medium intuited that and then immediately said, your aunt is saying, call your mother. And she was like, I knew my aunt wasn't telling me to call my mother. I knew in my gut, this is not the right choice. But that woman couldn't sit with the fact that I don't have a relationship with my mother. And her judgment came in. Right.
Okay.
So we want to be really careful. And I tell every client too, you have your own tripwire, whatever comes out of these lips. Yeah. Right. Even in a session, I am not God. Even if I'm telling you I'm tapped into source, you are tapped into source too. And your connection matters a hell of a lot more than what comes out of my lips. So vet it with your own experience. If it doesn't land, let it go. Let it go. If it's ego blocking it, you'll have more opportunities, but most likely it's your soul. It's like you're hearing what you need to hear. And that's all I'm here to do, is to help you hear that.
Yeah. And I've experienced that too, because I love your word tripwire, because I've said when I'm, in mediumship circle and practicing, I'll say something. And I think my human brain kind of went with I was wearing my doctor hat or whatever. Right. And then suddenly I feel heavy. And I'm like, I don't think that last part that I said was right. Yeah. And usually that's correct. They're like, yeah, that doesn't resonate with me. And so it's we have to give ourselves some grace, right? Because we are, right?
And you're actively doing this, just like when you sit in meditation, right? And the thoughts come and you get caught up in them. And all of a sudden now you just did your laundry list. And then you don't go, oh my God, I can't believe I'm a bad meditator. Or you do, and you go, oh, look, sweet human, I love you so much. Let's go back to the mantra, right? It's okay. It's about that awareness and being like, oops. We all make mistakes, and also we're figuring it out as we go along. And so you just keep coming back to center. You learn how to keep coming back to center. And that's all you got to do in life, in channeling, in everything. And the guys are saying too, a lot of the work that I do is help you know where the center is, because sometimes we have it over there somewhere. And so a lot of this is just learning to know what our center feels like so that we can get back there and we can live from there more. And that's the work that I do, is I help you find that and grow that and strengthen that, so that can be your new normal and your new point of focus.
Yeah, that resonates with me big time, because that's where I'm at, is really growing into this world. And I just love everything you said. And I know that we could talk for hours and go down many, many rabbit holes, because I love that. I'm curious like you. But, I want to respect your time and the audience's time. We definitely would love to have you back on and do kind of a part 2. I know you're a busy lady. So, one last thing is, you've just said some last great words, but if you have a final message for the audience, and then where can people find you?
Yes. So first of all, you'll know if this resonates with you, like, start with what lands. I get people, I was on this podcast like 5 years ago, and I still get calls. So I'm in her first season, but she went really big. It's a top spiritual podcast now. And, so every like month, I get a couple of calls from people that saw me on that show. Right. And I ask them like, how did you find me? And they'll be like, yeah, I was listening to this podcast and something about you felt right. Right.
That's what happened to me.
We know. Follow that. Listen to that, whether it's me or someone else, it's all good. Because sometimes we don't need to understand it. You just need to like follow it. Right. So that's the first thing. And then the parting words I'd love to give to everyone is you already know. You have this inside of you. You have this intuition. And, the more you learn to listen to it, I promise you, the more your life will expand and grow and change in ways that you can't even imagine. Like
So true.
my life just continues to get better and better and better the more I learn to hone and listen and follow my inner wisdom. So it's that. And you have it. We all have it. Some of us have, it's front and center and loud, and I use it professionally, but we all have this. There's not a
Yes, we
human
do.
being on the planet that doesn't. So if this feels like something in you that you want to awaken, do that. Check it out. How do you do that with me? I teach periodically to folks all over the world. I do intuitive readings and intuitive coaching to people all over the planet, and intuitive counseling to people in the state of Connecticut where I'm licensed. Still a few of those left. I have a podcast, Intuitive Connection, which is on all the major platforms. It's Intuitive Connection with Victoria Shaw. So lots of free teaching information in there, wonderful guests, a lot of channeled episodes, readings. So you get the gamut of the experience, what it's like to work with me, and just a lot of great information about just how to live life, from that soul aligned lens. And then the TV show Living in Alignment is with Soul Search TV. So it's on the Soul Search platform, but the easiest way to find it. And from there, it streams everywhere, like Roku, I think Amazon and Apple, but you have to go to like the Soul Search icon. But honest to God, the easiest way to find it is just go to my website, which is Victoria Shaw, SHAW, Intuitive, victoriashawintuitive.com. And you'll see the TV show, the podcast, and all of the good stuff, how to work with me, any classes I have coming up. I have a big in-person retreat coming up at the end of March at my other business, Cactus Blossom Retreat.
Excited. I'm going to be signing up for that one.
Yeah, please. Yeah. That one's right. It's going to be amazing. It's myself and a friend who's also going to come support and do some body code and energy clearing along with the intuition development. So it's going to be amazing. So those are all the things.
It's a beautiful home, right? It's a beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. The pictures that I saw were incredible.
Yay. Well, definitely come join us. We would love that. It's going to be really, really fun. It's going to be intimate too. It's not going to be a big group. We're limiting it to about 12 to 14 people. So
I can't wait.
It's going to be a lot of hands-on. So that would be a great way to supercharge your intuition for sure. So yay. Thank you. This was really fun.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have extensive knowledge base and experience firsthand, and I love that. So thanks again for being on the show and on the podcast, and we'll do it again in the future. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right.